Big change in terms of what's going on.
Big day, that change too, yeah.
Talk to us about this and how it changes fraud implications.
Yeah, so starting today, consumers will start to see that more and more of the merchants that they shop at will be enabling their point-of-sale registers to be able to accept a chip on their card, to read that chip. So going forward, many more of the transactions we do every day will be switching from using the mag stripe to inserting the card and reading the chip. The benefit that gets is that chip generates a unique one-time code that changes with each transaction. So if a criminal hacks into the merchant system, they can't use that data to do counterfeit fraud.
Because that code is good only one time.
Exactly. It's only good one time. And so if a criminal steals that, they can't use it to do counterfeit fraud, which is roughly 2/3 of the fraud we see in stores today. So it's going to bring even more advanced security compared to what we already have.
And to be clear, the change today is that the liability for fraud moves from the credit card issuer to the merchant.
Exactly.
And yet that we've seen studies that say that somewhere, maybe even more than 50% of the small businesses out there don't recognize that change is taking place, and that the cash register they're using, the swiping technology they're using, has a change in the law, and the great risk of credit card fraud is now on their books.
Yeah, so what's happening today is a liability shift, whereas today consumers are not liable for any fraud on their card, but the liability is following with their card issuer, either the bank or the credit union. So as you mentioned, starting today, if the merchant doesn't yet have a chip terminal, and if the cardholder brings in a chip card and uses the mag stripe on the back of that card at the terminal, if that turns out to be a fraudulent transaction, the merchant may be liable. But the good news is, for most small business merchants, they actually are not the ones who are receiving most of the counterfeit fraud today. It's usually the electronics stores and the high-end luxury good retailers. So your local delicatessen and hair salon and dry cleaner, they're not seeing a lot of counterfeit fraud today. So they still have quite a bit of time.
I've been worried about my hair salon.
Yeah, I'm sure
you should be.
So we certainly want every merchant to move to chip as quickly as possible, because it secures the whole payment system and makes that data a lot less attractive for criminals to try to steal. But the bulk of the counterfeit fraud happens usually at merchants that sell high-end goods that a criminal wants to go after.
Stephanie, there aren't, though. I mean, there's still, I've gotten some new cards, but I still have some old cards that don't have this new chip. When do we kind of see this through all the systems?
Yeah, we see that roughly 60% of consumers have at least one chip card in their wallet, and it tends to be the card that they use the most frequently. What's going to happen is, as your current cards expire, that's when the issuers will be replacing them with a chip card. So it depends on when your current cards expire. We know from other countries that have moved to chip, it takes usually about 2 or 3 years to get a whole entire country to migrate all of the cards and all of the merchant terminals to about 60-70% of the volume being chip. So in the meantime, consumers are protected, but we want to move to this direction to bring that security. Exactly.
I think it's also interesting the way that the U.S. has taken a very different approach historically to the issue of fraud than Europe. Right? In Europe, you've had these chips for a long time. That's been one of the primary methods to fight fraud at the point of purchase. But in the U.S., from what I understand, to correct me if I'm wrong, I often am, but I'm never in doubt. It seems that we've taken a big data approach for a long time, that we've taken the approach of look at weird behaviors, let the computers sift through this, call the person and say, we noticed you just bought gasoline in Albuquerque right after you bought clothing in San Francisco. And that the merger of those two approaches, that Europe's now using big data, and we're now using the chip technology.
Exactly. So the U.S. has had the benefit of really sophisticated online real-time transaction processing for more than 30 years, whereas in Europe and many other parts of the world, they were using the transactions being stored in the terminal and sent in later that night or the next day. So they were relying on chip technology to secure those transactions before they were sent in.
So is that really about telecommunications infrastructure, not about the credit card companies?
It's a little bit about cost of telecommunications as well as speed of telecommunications. So the fact that we've had inexpensive, fast, reliable telecom here in the U.S. for many years has allowed us to build out that really sophisticated predictive analytics. And the rest of the world is now having internet-connected devices, so they have that speed and that convenience as well. So they're building out their big data part, as you mentioned, and we're bringing chip data here to even enhance the scores we already have.
Just got about 20 seconds left. This is easy for Target, Walmart. They can afford to make these changes. What about for small businesses, the backbone of our economy? Just got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, for the small business merchants, fortunately, there's a lot of cost-effective solutions available to them. There's a Costco device for $99. Square has a reader for $49.
So we're
seeing a lot of cost-effective solutions for the small business merchants.